Have you ever noticed how we spend hours talking about work, relationships, money, school, or even what others are doing? But the moment someone says, I've been struggling, the room goes quiet. Someone changes the subject, someone tells them they'll be okay, and someone reminds them that others have it worse. And just like that, the conversation is over. Welcome back to Real Talk. I'm your host, and today we're discussing something that affects nearly every family, yet remains one of the hardest conversations to have: mental health. If you grew up in a close knit cultural community, you've likely seen this firsthand. Mental health often becomes something we whisper about rather than openly support. But why? Why is it easier to ask someone about their career than their emotional well being? Why can we celebrate someone's promotion yet feel uncomfortable acknowledging their depression? And why do so many people feel like they have to suffer in silence just to protect the image that everything is okay? I sometimes wonder how many people are silently struggling while pretending they're perfectly fine. Think about it. How many times have you said, I'm good, even when you weren't? How many people have smiled through family dinners, weddings, birthday parties, or even community events while quietly battling anxiety, panic attacks, depression, grief, or burnout? The scary part is, you probably know someone. You just don't realize you know someone. Because people have been incredibly good at hiding it. What's interesting is that if someone broke their arm, no one would question whether they need help. If someone had pneumonia, they will tell them to go see a doctor immediately. But when someone says they're mentally exhausted, suddenly everyone becomes an expert. Just think positive, go outside, you'll get over it. Others people have it worse. Why do we treat emotional pain so differently from our physical ones? That's the question I want us to sit with today. Whenever I ask the old generation why mental health wasn't discussed growing up, I usually get the same response. We didn't have time to think about those things. We were trying to survive. And honestly, valid. I'll tell you why. Many of our parents and grandparents lived through war, immigration, poverty, political instability, discrimination, or unimaginable hardships. Not to say we haven't ourselves, but when every day is about putting food on the table, learning a new language, finding work, or simply creating a safer future for our children, emotional health naturally takes a back seat. I don't say this to criticize previous generations. In fact, I think they deserve tremendous respect for everything they sacrificed. But I also think something important happened along the way. Survival teaches us how to endure, but it doesn't always teach you how to heal. Imagine spending decades believing your feelings came second to your responsibilities. Imagine growing up believing that crying meant you weren't strong enough. Or imagine never hearing the words, how are you really doing? If that's all you knew, how could you teach something you never taught yourself? Maybe the issue isn't the previous generation didn't care. Maybe they simply lacked the emotional tools. And that's the important distinction. Because blame keeps us stuck, but understanding helps us move forward. Understanding where the silence came from doesn't mean we have to keep living in it. Because while survival helped many families build incredible lives, silence also had its price. People endured hardships quietly. Marriages, parents, teenagers all faced their struggles without outward expression. Entire generations learned that asking for help wasn't something people like us did. It's a follow-up question. Let's take a moment. Can we talk about the parents for a minute? I think this plays a bigger role than we realize. Sometimes it feels like we're more concerned with looking okay than actually being okay. Families spend months planning a beautiful wedding, right? We celebrate graduations, we dress up for the best holidays, we post smiling family pictures online, and we proudly share our accomplishments. And there's nothing wrong with celebrating those moments. But I do wonder, how much effort do we put into making sure our loved ones actually feel okay? Sometimes we're so focused on protecting the family's image, we forget to protect the people inside the family. Have you thought about that? Appearances can be convincing. Someone could be successful, married, financially stable, and smiling in every single picture and still feel incredibly alone. Pain doesn't always look like we expect. Sometimes it looks like the happiest person in the room. So let's be honest. Close-knit communities hold something special. People are familiar with one another, families support each other, traditions exist. There's a sense of belonging. Support is the core part of these communities. But sometimes those same close connections create fear because everyone knows everyone, right? Imagine finally finding the courage to tell someone, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, I'm overwhelmed. And instead of receiving support, you become the subject of conversation. Labels appear, people make assumptions, your struggle becomes community news. And before you know it, you're carrying two burdens, your mental health and now your reputation. Have you ever wondered why gossip spreads so quickly? I don't think it's always because people are cruel. Sometimes I think people simply don't know how to respond to pain. It's easier to talk about someone than talk with them, and it's easier to speculate than to ask. Imagine how different our communities would look if every conversation behind someone's back became a conversation beside them instead. Many of us grew up hearing things like, push through, life isn't easy, everyone has problems, you'll get over it. There's truth in resilience, there's no question in that. Life is hard, challenges make us stronger, but resilience and emotional suppression aren't the same. At some point, everyone reaches a limit, not because they're weak, but because they're human. Burnout, panic attacks, depression, and the need for therapy are not signs of weakness. Sometimes the strongest thing a person can do is admit, I'm not okay. That takes courage. Far more courage than pretending everything is fine. But the questions are we able to support people as they need? What does it take to be a genuine human who cares for others? And can you do it? Think about it. As you think about this, let's talk about the one misconception that persists. The mental health is somehow all in your head. How can we say that when our minds and bodies are deeply connected? Stress can disrupt sleep. Anxiety can cause muscle tension, stomach problems, racing thoughts, and a pounding heart. Depression can make even the smallest task feel so overwhelming. These experiences aren't imaginary, they're real. And when someone lacks a healthy way to cope, they often seek relief through various means. Sometimes they isolate themselves. They turn to unhealthy relationships. Sometimes they use substances. They try to work even more than they can or become perfectionists. Occasionally, they stay constantly busy because slowing down would force them to confront long avoided emotions. Ignoring mental health doesn't make it disappear. It simply changes where it shows up and how. So I've been thinking about this lately. What if beneath all that judgment, it's actually fear? Fear that if we admit we're struggling, people will see us differently. Fear that seeking help signifies failure, leads to disappointing our families, and turns us into the next whispered story. Fear has a funny way of disguising itself. Sometimes it sounds like criticism and it looks like anger. And it shows up as, you're overreacting, you'll be fine, stop thinking about it. But maybe, just maybe, some of the people saying those things were never given permission to admit that they were struggling. Today's generation faces pressure a previous generation never imagined. Let's talk about that. We're constantly comparing ourselves. Comparison slowly convinces us that everyone else has life figured out. Meanwhile, most people are simply trying to do their best. On top of that, many of us are never taught emotional intelligence or regulation, will and responsibility, hard work, survival. But ask us about communication, self-awareness, healthy boundaries, self-compassion. Those are skills. And the good news for everyone is that these skills can be learned. Here's what gives me hope. We're already seeing change, no matter how small it is. We're finally beginning to understand that asking for help isn't a weakness, it's strength. Real change doesn't happen because one person has the perfect answer. It happens when thousands of ordinary people decide to have the conversation they once feared. It starts with parents creating homes where emotions are welcome and not dismissed, where friends listen to each other instead of immediately trying to fix things. And it starts with communities choosing compassion over gossip. Every time we respond with empathy rather than judgment, we're changing the culture and the narrative, not only for ourselves, but for every generation that follows. So before I let you go, I have one question for you. If a family member was quietly struggling today, would they feel safe confiding in you? Would they expect compassion or fear of criticism? Would they hope for understanding or would they dread whispers? It's a tough question to ask and to answer. And maybe that's exactly why we need to ask it. Because every family passes something down. And sometimes, without even realizing it, we pass down silence. The beautiful thing is that cycle can be broken. We can respect the sacrifices of previous generations while building a healthier future of those who follow. There's no need to pick between resilience and vulnerability. We can embrace both. So if today's conversation resonated with you, share the episode with someone you love. Maybe it starts a conversation you've both been avoiding. And maybe that conversation changes more than you ever expected. Thank you for spending time with me. This has been Real Talk. Until next time, take care of your mind, take care of your heart, and take care of each other.